All righty, everybody, I want to welcome you to, as Donna's getting our PowerPoint presentation up, I want to welcome you to another one of our Bulldog webinars. This one we are so thrilled to have. It's our tip-off of basketball season, and this is sponsored by Mako Medical, and we're thrilled that they're on board with us. Many of you may have heard about Mako Medical. They are now probably one of the top COVID-19 testers in college sports. They have not only the Big South and the ACC and others, but they certainly are a great partner of ours. So we want to thank them for sponsoring this webinar. We have a great group of basketball folks that are joining us via Zoom and some very special guests. So we're going to start this off. Donna's going to flip through. We want to thank Coach Shaka Smart for being with us. He's got a little connection here with our head coach, Mike Morrell, and he certainly has got a reputation. And Shaka, I want to congratulate you. You just joined the NABCA board, so congratulations. And you'll hear more from Shaka in a few minutes. Also joining us is someone who all of you are getting to know better and better. She's been with us a long time as our associate head coach, and now in her first year as our head coach, Honey Brown. And of course, someone that all of you are getting to know more and more about is Coach Mike Morrell. So Mike, I know you and Honey have been busy trying to get ready for the kickoff of basketball season. So we're looking forward to hearing more about our teams. And someone who is no stranger to me as a former women's basketball coach, Coach Wes Moore, head coach at NC State. We go back way back. We don't even want to say how far back you and I go. And I know you and Honey have crossed paths. So we're looking forward to hearing a little bit about women's college basketball. So Donna, I think you got Coach Shaka Smart on with us. We're going to start with you, Shaka. So if you want to go off of mute. And we want to, first of all, welcome you. And I'm going to kind of ask some questions. Our guest, David Jandrew's on here with us. He's going to be watching the chat box. People can type in questions if they want to. But I want to start with this. You actually have a background that I'm thrilled, as I was researching some things that maybe not everyone knows. You attended a private liberal arts university, much like UNC Asheville, Kenyon University, where you are the all-time assist leaders. Tell us a little bit about your experience as a student athlete, particularly at a liberal arts university similar to UNC Asheville.
Well, first of all, it's great to be on with you. And Janet, thanks for having me. It's good to see you. We talked on the phone, when you were going through the process of hiring Mike, but this is the first time I've actually gotten a chance to meet you in person or over Zoom. So good to be on with everybody. For me, I played at a school called Kenyon College, and I guess it was similar in that UNC Asheville is a very good academic school, liberal arts school, smaller school. So is Kenyon College, but in terms of basketball levels, UNC Asheville is way higher of a level. So for me, I played Division III, and the school that I went to, was a very good academic school, but I also took a lot of pride in basketball. So, really for me, I spent 99% of my time either studying in the library, working on my academics, or on the basketball court. And fortunately, I was able to go from playing to coaching. I think for those of us that love the game, that's a simple transition, and it's been a lot of fun.
So let's talk about your coaching career. Obviously, you've had stops at California, PA, Akron, Clemson, Florida. Tell us a little bit about your transition, and we won't get to VCU or Texas yet, but just as an assistant coach, and I know some of the things that you learned along the way that's helping you now as a head coach at Texas.
Well, Janet, I got to tell you, the main thing I want to talk about today is Mike Morrell.
Oh, no, not yet.
So I'm happy to talk to you about my career, but I'm most excited about telling a few stories about Mike. And I'm sure the folks there at UNC Asheville would love to hear about Mike as a younger coach, but I'll give you a quick background for me. I started as a graduate assistant at, as you mentioned, a school called California University of Pennsylvania. It's in a small town in Pennsylvania with one stoplight. And we used to call recruits and we would say, hey, this is coach from California University. And it wasn't until about the fourth or fifth conversation that we would get to the Pennsylvania part, because we wanted to envision beaches and sunny weather. So that was a great start for me, just being a graduate assistant. Mike was also a graduate assistant. That's when I first met him, when he came to Clemson. And I think when you start your career or early in your career, you are a GA, it gives you a great understanding from the ground floor of coaching of how everything works. And it certainly forces you to have a level of humility that there's nothing going on in the program that you are above. I remember my very first day as a GA, they had me sharpening pencils. So literally, I mean, that was kind of my start in coaching, but I loved it. I loved the opportunity. I went from there to University of Dayton. And I know you guys are familiar with Dayton, because your teams played there in the NCAA tournament, and those are exciting games. But it's a place where basketball is just everything. And I got an introduction to Division I coaching, got a chance to work for a guy that Mike also worked for and spent a lot of time with, named Oliver Purnell, who's a real big mentor of both of ours. Went from there to Akron, got a chance to, learn a ton at Akron for 3 years, worked with a great coach there. Then I went to Clemson. When I first got to Clemson, okay, this is my first Mike Morrell story I'm gonna share with you. I had never been around college football. I went to a small school that didn't have big time football. We had Division III football. I'd worked at Dayton and Akron, who did not have big time football. So when I got to Clemson, it was my introduction to big time college football, and I loved it. I mean, I loved being at the games and being around the program. And one of the people I got a chance to get to know was Dabo Swinney, who was an assistant coach at the time. But I got to tell you, okay, when Mike got to campus as a GA, we would occasionally play noontime basketball with the football guys. And this is Mike had probably been there for about a month or two. And any of you guys that have been on the court with Mike know he's a really good shooter. So Mike started making all these shots, and we're playing against Dabo. Dabo's on the other team. And Dabo was getting mad. I mean, he was really getting upset because Mike and I were on the other team. Mike was making all these shots and we were winning. One thing about football coaches, they're not particularly skilled in basketball, but they hustle and they play hard. So Dabo was running around, and I was a little worried that Mike was going to get his legs taken out from under him because he was hot from three that day. But one thing that you guys can brag about with your basketball coach, not a lot of people can say this, is that he got the better of Dabo Swinney in noontime basketball.
Oh, that's great.
From Clemson, I went to Florida, worked for Billy Donovan. That was like being in a PhD program in coaching, because he's, to me, one of the best coaches at any level of basketball, and just getting a chance to absorb all the things that he taught the team and the staff there was phenomenal. Then I was fortunate to get the job at VCU.
Yeah, so let's talk about this, because it is gonna transition to Mike and what we're trying to do here with our men's basketball program. You became one of the youngest head coaches at VCU, and your style of play, this like defensive calls, all kinds of, where did you get that from, and how did you decide to use that at VCU? Because I know from watching our teams play, Mike has borrowed some of that. And so talk a little bit about that style of play.
Well, I think for any coach, your style of play is a combination of the way you like to play when you played, and then the guys that you've been around when you were an assistant coach and learning in the profession. So I worked for 5 head coaches. I played for a couple of head coaches. And just having a chance to be around 3 or 4 guys that were really big into pressing. They like to press, they like to extend the defense, they like to really get after the other team and be the aggressors. and particularly, definitely my biggest influence in pressing, Mike's biggest influence in pressing was a guy by the name of Oliver Purnell that we worked for at Clemson. And Oliver did a phenomenal job there of understanding, hey, I'm at Clemson. I'm probably not going to be able to recruit quite as skilled of players as Duke and Carolina, but I can get just as good of athletes. And he felt like if he could have athletes at every position that could fly around, extend the floor, trap, play aggressive defense, that could really give us an advantage on the floor and allow us to compete with those elite programs. Well, you guys probably know what Oliver did at Clemson was amazing. He's the only coach in Clemson history to go to 3 straight NCAA tournaments. And he also, led the team to some phenomenal records in the ACC. Mike was a big part of that. Mike came in as a GA. He worked his way up on the staff. I know this is a little bit of a side rant, but I got to tell this other story about Mike and Clemson. Okay. Yeah. I tell you, Janet, I came prepared with some stories.
There we go. We want them. Go ahead.
So when we were at Clemson, Mike and I, and then one other gentleman, we were the younger guys on the staff. And then there was some, guys that were a little older. So we were in charge of curfew. And so Coach Purnell would say, okay, I want the guys in their rooms by this time, all right, the night before the game. And that was a bear because these guys, the curfew was like 11 o'clock or something like, and these guys are college kids. And, we had some dudes at Clemson that they were hard rockers on the court in terms of playing hard and being aggressive, but then off the court, they like to have a little bit of fun too. So Mike and I were in charge of curfew. So we would have to go to these guys' apartments and beg them and talk them into, winding it down, getting ready for bed, and, kicking any guests out of their apartment that they had in their apartment. That was the hardest part. And Mike developed this great way with the guys. He was a GA. He was, what, Mike? You were probably like 23, 24 years old at the time. And so he's pretty close in age to these guys. But he really, I think that was a phenomenal learning experience for him to be able to kind of meet players halfway and understand them and where they're coming from, but also get them to do something that they really didn't want to do. And that's a big part of coaching. And I think because Mike had such a good way with those guys, and because, hopefully we were able to have them in a good place and abide by stuff like curfew, that, Janet, goes hand in hand with the next day being able to press, being able to play with great energy, because those guys were in a pretty good place mentally, but also physically they had got their rest. Mm-hmm. The one thing, and Mike will tell you this, that we learned over the years at VCU and since then, is that these players that we're coaching, I know this sounds obvious, but as a coach, you kind of lose sight of this sometimes. They are human beings. They are not machines. So you don't just say, okay, go out there and press for 40 minutes and, go trap and run around and be perfect in it and give all the energy in the world. They have ebbs and flows with energy just like everybody else does. So, the ability that Mike had to help those guys be in a good place emotionally, mentally, that went a long way towards us being a good pressing team at Clemson. And all that to say, I kind of combined all that stuff together to make me, when I got the job at VCU, want to play that way. Mike ended up joining us at VCU, going into my 3rd season there. And in Mike's 1st, 2nd, and 3rd season at VCU, my 3rd, 4th, and 5th season there, we literally led the nation in steals. We led the nation in turnovers forced and turnover margin. So it ended up being really good for us, but that was 99% because of the players that we had. I mean, it's all about personnel.
Oh, that's great. We are going to let you keep telling some stories. I'm going to let Mike tell some stories on you, but obviously, University of Texas is coming to Asheville here now, and gosh, less than a week almost, we kick off, we have the Maui Invitational. And if know this, Shaka, people in our community, our Bulldog family, are huge basketball fans. We don't have football competition here. We are all into basketball. So let's talk about University of Texas. Some people are predicting you're definitely a top 20 team. Some have you in the top 10. You got a lot of returning players. Tell us what we can expect from your team when you come to town here for the Maui Invitational.
Well, Janet, is there any media on this call?
Probably, so go for it.
You know, I'll tell you, we have a unique dynamic in that we had 12 scholarship players last year, and we have all 12 back. And that is just extremely rare. I know you guys have a lot of players back on Mike's team, which is always a good thing to have continuity. But particularly at this level, you tend to lose guys early to the NBA. You know, Mike will tell you, we went 3 straight years here at Texas where our best player as a freshman left and was a first-round pick in the NBA draft, which is terrific. And we're happy when they go on and achieve that goal. But it also makes it very challenging to have continuity in your program. So we're super excited that we have a lot of guys back. We also added a really talented player that, you know, was a McDonald's All-American and very good athlete. So we're excited about coming to Asheville. I got a chance to spend a little bit of time in Asheville, Janet, when I was an assistant at Clemson, and I loved it up there. And, you know, just obviously the climate, the mountains, the people, it's a great place to be. And if we can't go to Maui, then, you know, the next best place to go in the United States of America is Asheville. So we're excited. We open up with Davidson, who's got a terrific program and is very well coached. It's obviously a great field, and looking forward to getting the opportunity to play.
Well, let's transition a little bit. You're telling us a few stories about Mike, and one of the things that I definitely know is Mike has you on speed dial. Y'all have a very unique mentoring relationship, professional relationship. So, Mike, talk about what Shaka has meant to you in your career and how you're using some of that at UNC Asheville. Tell some stories too. He's already given us 2 good ones.
No, because Janet, I got a bunch more on Mike, so I got to get those in.
One thing you got to understand, and you know this as a coach, is that the whole storytelling when you work for someone usually only goes one way. So I don't try to. I'm not going at coach that way. It'll find its way back to me. One thing he did fail to say is, he was the biggest reason I got the job at Clemson, and he essentially hired that position because Coach Purnell, I mean, when I got there, Coach Smart did everything. You know, he was trying to hire the GA spot, and he just wore so many hats. But I remember when I got there for my interview, he and Josh Pastorino, who was there with us at the time, it was an interview, but it wasn't an interview. And if you know one thing about Coach Smart, he is the most fierce competitor I've ever been around in my life. But he can go to this level of when he's competing with you one-on-one, that it's just another level that not a lot of people have. So he made me, and Coach, we've probably not told this story in years, but you'll remember this. I get there, I don't have any tennis shoes really. I'm just there to interview for the job. And Coach and Josh asked me if I want to go for a run, and we went to run around the Lake Hartwell out there. I'm thinking, you know, we're gonna go a couple laps around the track. I'm not in great shape. I hadn't been running, but I'm trying to get this job. Like Coach is making it I mean, it's like I got to finish this run to get this job. It was about 6 or 7 miles later. At the end of that run, I was barely conscious. I couldn't stand up. So those were some of the things that Coach enjoyed to put you through as a kind of a young up and comer. That was my first day. I hadn't even gotten a job yet, but we don't have enough time on this Zoom for me to kind of tell what he means to me. I mean, the basis for everything that we are about here at UNC Asheville, and we've put our own twist on it, but is from what I learned from him. And he brings up Coach Purnell, but you know, and Coach Purnell was huge in that. I learned pressing from Coach Purnell. Now, when Coach Smart went to VCU, he took it to a completely different level. But, you know, just take, for example, Mike Venezia. You know, Mike's on our staff here. Mike's worked for Coach at 2 different places. So it's more than just the relationship that Coach and I have, but it's the relationship that I know he's really proud of too, is everybody that's been underneath him that now work together at different places.
Yeah, so let's talk a little Bulldog basketball. And I will say, I was in Texas for the men's Final Four when I was interviewing Mike for this job. And Shaka, you reached out, you were texting, you were trying to do, I really appreciate how you try to help your former assistants get these head coaching jobs. Mike, the news just came out. We're picked number 2 in the Big South. We got a couple players on the preseason. Talk a little bit about what our fans can expect when we open up in the Mako Medical Asheville Classic here the week of Thanksgiving.
Yeah, as Coach said, we've got a lot of guys back, and it's a little more rare at his level, but it's still pretty rare here to have that many guys back. You know, we've got almost 95% of our minutes returning. That can go one of 2 ways. You know, our guys have to understand it was one thing. Coach Smart actually spoke to our team back at the beginning of the summer during COVID. And the biggest thing I asked him was just to be completely honest with our team in terms of it's going to be a different year in terms of expectations for us, but they're expectations nonetheless. You know, I was reading a guy, was listening to Coach Rhodesy yesterday, Coach, and he made a great comment. And it's really, we don't control where they pick us. We only control where we finish. And I think for us that's everything. We don't control any of this. We're obviously very proud of Devon and LJ for being on preseason all league teams. But the approach that we're taking is something that I learned from Coach Smart. And my first year at VCU was the year after he made the Final Four. And I got there right after that. And I would assume, I don't want to speak for him, but we were picked like 5th or 6th in the league that year, I believe, coming off the Final Four. And he always says this, that was his most favorite team ever, because those guys they were all about each other. We had one senior, we just had dudes who they didn't care about anything other than winning. And if we can do that, then we'll have a chance to be really good. But a lot of our approach is based off that particular team and what I've learned under Coach Smart.
Yeah, Mike, talk a little bit. We know about the Maui Invitational, the teams that are going to be in that. Let's talk about the Mako Medical Classic MTE that we're going to host and the teams that are coming to play in that.
Yeah, we open up with UNC Wilmington, who's out of the Colonial Conference, which will be a really challenging game for us. They have a lot coming back. And then the next day is obviously a huge rivalry of ours with Western Carolina. Mark's done a great job over there in terms of continuing to build that program. So, yeah, really excited. I mean, Coach knows, and I would say this whether you were on the call or not, Janet, that was your brainchild. And for us to be able to open up 2 straight games at home, it's the safest way for us to play games, and it's also the best chance that we have to get in as many games as possible.
Well, thanks for saying that, Mike. I also want to thank our friends at our sports commission, Demp, Bradford, and everybody in our Asheville community. We really want people to understand we love basketball in Asheville. So the more basketball we can have here, we have a neutral game that's going to be on Wednesday with Western men are going to play UNC Wilmington, a neutral game, and then we're going to go downtown ourselves and talk about that game, December 8th game down at Harris.
Yeah, that's a big one. We play ETSU there. They've won 1 million games in the last few years, and so it just made a lot of sense for us regionally, and it made a lot of sense for our schedule. we obviously want to be challenged, and we're definitely doing that with the schedule that we put together. But again, to keep going back, I mean, I don't want to keep going, but at VCU 2 straight years, Coach, we had the #1 non-conference strength of schedule in the country. So the opportunity for us to challenge ourselves before we get to the Big South is everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's transition a little bit. We're going to have some questions here, and Coach Smart, I hope you can stay with us. Let's talk a little, because when I say basketball, I mean men and women. And you know, I'm a former women's college basketball coach. I was obviously on the men's basketball selection committee. But before we get to Coach Moore, let's go to Coach Brown. We also have a women's player on the preseason all-conference team. Talk a little bit about what you're expecting, because you're going to open up on Wednesday, November the 25th.
Yeah, we were fortunate enough. Nadiria Evans was picked first team all conference, and I think that it's very well deserving. She's earned that. She's earned the respect of the people in the conference. She was our leading scorer last year, led us in several categories, and I think the coaches in our conference and other players understand she's an elite guard, and we are super proud of her for getting that. And you know, we're going to need her, of course, to produce this year and be a great leader on and off the court. We start with the Western, like you said. It's our mountain rivalry. It's always great to play those games, like Mike mentioned. Kylie's doing a great job over there rebuilding that program, and it's going to be fun to play them. And then we follow up with App, so we go from one mountain to another with our next game. So we're looking forward to getting out there. I think Coach Morrell, Coach Moore, Coach Smart, we're all just excited that we can even say that we're getting ready to play games.
Well, honey, let's talk a little bit, and Mike chime in too, and maybe we can talk. The format the Big South is chosen, we're going to play 20 Big South Conference games. Talk about that and how you're going to prepare for those back-to-back games. Let our fans know what we're going to do for conference.
Yeah, they've decided, and like Coach Morrell mentioned, we want to do this the safest way we can possible. And what we have decided as a conference, that playing back-to-back at one site, so whether you go to High Point and you're playing 2 games there back-to-back, we felt like that was going to be the best way and safest way to do it with your teams. So that's what it's going to be new. But of course, you play in tournaments every year, so you are a little bit used to that in some respects. It's just going to be the entire season. I've already reached out to a few folks that are in the Ivy League, because of course the Ivy League has been doing this for a while, to talk a little bit about how they've trained and what they're doing to get ready for that type of format. But it is going to be different for our players. I think they'll enjoy it. For people like me or other coaches that really enjoy scouting, it's going to make you adjust a little bit on how you do that from game to game. But, you know, Coach Morrell and I have talked about this before too. We're just, you know, it's basketball. You get out there, you make a few adjustments, you let your kids play. And Coach Smart alluded to this too. You know, you need to have good players that are bought into what you're doing.
Well, before I get to Coach Moore here, David Jander, you got a couple questions you say that people want to ask, because I think Coach Smart might have to get off here. So let's ask a couple questions, and then I'll introduce my good friend Wes Moore.
Well, Coach Ballard at FIU said that Coach Smart and Coach Morrell need to be talking assists more. That was a big topic in the chat. But one question that was for both Coach Smart and Coach Morrell was, how has expectations that you faced at VCU, how is that similar to what you're facing now, Coach Morrell? And Coach Smart, how did you handle the increase in expectations as the program got better?
Go ahead, Coachy.
Well, I think there's 2 different types of expectations. There's the expectations that are external, and then there's expectations that are internal in your program, coming from your players, coming from your coaching staff. And I really believe that the internal expectations are what matters most. We tell our guys all the time, make sure that your habits and your behavior matches your expectations. Anytime those things are out of alignment, what ends up occurring is going to lower, it's going to drop to the level of your habits. And so I think expectations from the external side are a good thing as long as you're willing to embrace them. The reality is we've gone a long time since we've been able to play basketball, you know, with this quarantine and our guys not even be able to be here for quite some time. So I think for all of us, all coaches on the men's side, the women's side, high school, the opportunity to actually go out there on the court and that ball go up in the air and compete is something that we've got to embrace and be excited about. And along with that, there's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser. So if people expect us to win, if people expect UNC Asheville to win, then that's because, you know, Mike's done a good job building the program. He's got some really good players coming back. But at the end of the day, that expectation doesn't create the win by itself. You have to go out and do the things that go into winning, teamwork, work ethic, making sure you're willing to execute, making sure that you're connected around one cause. So we know those are the things that really creates winning.
Yeah, I mean, tough to follow that up. But I mean, I think, again, when I was an assistant working for Coach Smart, it was always about getting the guys in the best place that they can possibly be in when that ball does go up in the air. And it doesn't guarantee that you're going to win, but we've always believed that that superseded an X and an O. And we believe that here. The ability for us doesn't mean that that's not important. It doesn't mean that the schematics of basketball don't matter. They absolutely do. Scouting is very important. How we attack the other team is very important, but it's not more important than having these guys in the right frame of mind, as coach would say, to go out and play with nothing to lose. And if a guy can go out and play ACL, aggressive, confident, and loose more often than not, then the results are going to be ones that you're really happy with. But we're not going to go undefeated every single year. Again, like Coach said, there's going to be a winner and a loser. Our ability to respond is going to be everything. And that's going to be a huge challenge for everybody this year because your team might look different from game to game.
Well, both of you mentioned about getting your teams mentally ready. And honey, I want you to think about this question too. How is it different because of COVID right now? I mean, the mental part, what are you doing differently to help them get ready mentally because they haven't played in so long? Shaka, you can go first. I saw you smile, so I know you're doing something different.
Well, I think that first of all, it's humbling for all of us and puts everything in perspective to remember that we don't control a lot of this stuff. And, you know, like Mike said, we may have a different team available on Saturday versus what we have the following Saturday. And I think as coaches, particularly if you have a type A personality like I have or like Mike has, most coaches have, you want to control everything. You want to make sure that, all right, we have every I dotted, every T crossed. And this is just going to be one of those years where we have to be highly flexible. We have to be highly adaptable. We have to be optimistic and positive, even in the face of some challenges and some adversity. You know, if a guy goes down with an injury or, you know, heaven forbid, has to quarantine, we can't just stop the program. We got to keep going. And I think what we demonstrate for our players in terms of the example that we set is going to be so incredibly important, because if they see us reacting negatively, if they see us failing to respond the right way to adversity, then how can we expect them to do it the right way? I think sometimes as coaches, we lose sight of the fact that first, before the players act the right way and respond the right way, we have to do that. We have to set the right example. We have to be the adults in the room. So it's an exciting challenge. It's going to be fun to follow this year for sure.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's a day-by-day approach. Just, you know, if we get a chance to go out and practice tomorrow, let's try to be better today than we were yesterday. And then if we get tomorrow, let's try to be better tomorrow than we were today. And I think most people would say, wow, that's a really simple goal, but it's not. It's such a challenge in order to do that. And I think anything other than just a day-by-day approach right now and what goes into winning for your particular team, you're probably just spinning your wheels. And so for us, I think it's really important that our staffs take the same approach, you know, and because they have just the amount of influence as we do. And Coach is right. I mean, if we don't set the example, and it's hard, man. I know everybody's faced it. It's not easy, but it's more important this year than ever.
Yeah. Honey, what's your perspective? And then I'm going to introduce Wes Moore and let him share some of his wisdom.
I think what these two have been talking about, I think, especially for females too, we've always, been but saying it to them, understanding, telling them, hey, we understand this is tough. We understand that you're going through a lot, but this is what it takes. And, we've kind of referred back to last year, even in the summer when they were sitting at home and everybody was, I don't want to say miserable, but wanting to get back to things. And so if this is what we've got to do, this is what we're going to do to be able to compete. And like Mike said, doing it day by day, we try to be as consistent as we can be with them and be transparent, but also be understanding in this process because it is different and they are going through a lot. So I think that's the piece that you just want to constantly have conversations about, but having the mindset to do whatever it takes to be able to get out there.
Well, Wes, I'll let you come off of mute because we're going to talk a little about NC State women's basketball and how you and Honey know each other. I'll be first to admit that you are the all-time winningest coach that ever coached at UT Chattanooga in women's basketball. And I'll contribute some of those wins because you beat my teams many, many times. I mean, you've had a wonderful career, and what some of our folks might not know, last year you had NC State in the ACC title. Y'all were champions, done a great job back in the NCAA, really brought NC State back to the glory years of when Coach Yao was there. Had the disappointment of no March Madness. I know that was probably disappointing, and some people have got you picked as high as number 6 in the country right now. So tell us a little bit about you so our folks know a little bit about your background and a little bit about NC State and ACC women's basketball for this year.
Thanks, Janet. Again, we did go head-to-head several times, and I always knew your teams were going to be well prepared and well coached. So it's an honor to be on here with these guys. I met Coach Morrell when we were over at the Caravan in Asheville a couple of years ago. Shaka Smart, I hadn't been fortunate to be around him much, but I grew up in Texas, so I'm a big Texas fan, except for when they're playing NC State. And I actually went to the Texas-Oklahoma game, football game a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago. And then Asheville, actually my last win, I think, at Chattanooga was in Asheville in the Southern Conference tournament. Asheville does an unbelievable job with basketball events, so I'm sure this is going to be the same with the one coming up. Y'all, Janet, I love y'all's facility. That place is beautiful. I know, we played some games there, some games at the convention center, but beautiful what Asheville has done. And then with Honey, coached Honey in college. She helped turn our program around. I started out at little Maryville College in Tennessee. Great place, was there 6 years. But the year before I got there, they'd gone 1-25, and they were recruiting a lot of out-of-state or out-of-region players. And East Tennessee has some pretty good high school girls basketball. So Honey Brown came from a great program, Sevier County High School over there near the mountains. So I guess Honey always stays in the mountains. But I'll never forget when I was recruiting Honey, one time hung up the phone, getting ready to hang up. And I said, okay, Honey, I'll talk to you soon. And my wife said, hey, you don't call me Honey. And I said, no, and you don't shoot the three like she does either. So, but she was a great shooter, a very fundamental player, a great leader for our program. So I know all those qualities are going to come in well as a head coach over there at Asheville, because like I said, she led, she shared the basketball, She worked really hard on her game and on her skills. And so it was an honor. And obviously, like I said, she had a big part in turning that program around at Maryville. So, but yes, I was fortunate to start out at Maryville College, and I was in the shadow there at Pat Summit, and I got to be around her a lot. She made a big impact on my coaching career. And then I came actually to NC State to be an assistant coach in the mid-90s with Coach Yao, a legend. And then missed being a head coach, went to Francis Marion University down in South Carolina and was there 3 years, and then went to the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga for 15 years. And I will say, if Coach Morrell and Coach Smart are a reflection of Oliver Purnell, then I know they're classy guys, because I had an opportunity to go meet with University of Dayton about their women's basketball job there. I got there, they took me to his office to introduce me to Oliver Purnell, and it was the day after they had gotten beaten in the NCAA tournament. I would have probably said, hey, and shut the door. I walked in, he grabbed his keys, he said, come on, coach, let's go. And he took me, drove me around, took me to meet his wife at their home, took a lot of time with me. And that says a lot about the coaching tree that he's developed, and the players and people that have been with him. But anyway, I decided to stay in the South. I didn't think they had sweet tea in Dayton, so I stayed in Tennessee, and eventually made my way back to North Carolina State. And it has been unbelievable. I'm so blessed and so fortunate. And again, one thing I would say that I've tried to do everywhere I've been, a lot of people say it, but we really live it, is we're going to recruit good people. Obviously, we got to have very talented players at this level, but that's not going to be our only measuring stick. We want great players with great character, and they're great people. And so I've been so blessed to have players like Honey that have made my journey just unbelievable. I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Talk a little bit, Wes, about your team at NC State, and what's ACC women's basketball going to be like this year? I mean, I know we're missing a great coach at Notre Dame who's now going to be on the ACC network, I think. But talk about what you're expecting out of your team in ACC women's basketball.
Well, as you mentioned, we are being picked pretty high, and I enjoyed hearing both coaches talk about expectations, because right now ours are pretty high from the external standpoint. We do have a lot of talent returning, but we also had 4 seniors that graduated, left. One of those started. The other 3 had started at some point in their career before suffering knee injuries. But can you imagine having 3 seniors coming in off your bench that had previously started? We had a lot of depth that we could trust. And so it's going to be a little different. We'll see. But yes, we've got Elisa Canane, a 6'5" post player that made 3rd-team All-American last year as a sophomore, and picked ACC, all ACC in the preseason. Jakia Brown-Turner, who was only a freshman a year ago, she's also been picked preseason ACC. So we'll lean heavily on them. We got a couple of seniors, though, Kai Crutchfield, Kayla Jones, that bring a lot of the experience back and kind of lead these young kids. So we got a great nucleus, but the ACC is brutal. If you don't show up, you're going to get beat. And we're not going to slip up on anybody. We've maybe been able to do that the last year or two. We're going to get everybody's A game. And so we're going to have to be able to raise that level of play up every night. But it will be interesting to see how COVID affects all this. You see what's happening in football and games being postponed or canceled. And it's going to be interesting. Hopefully we can get this vaccine and get it out there and try to get rid of this horrible disease we're facing.
So, Coach, everywhere you've been very successful. And besides coaching, recruiting really good people, tell us 2 or 3 things that you think have contributed to your success no matter where you are.
Well, I mean, again, you do obviously have to have talent. I like people that can shoot the ball. So I probably, maybe sometimes would not have, they talked about having great athletes that can press and get after you. We try to do that. Obviously, you want the total package when you recruit somebody. but I also want to make sure our people can put the ball in the hole, can ring the bell. So, and then I feel like once we get them there, we're gonna get them to play defense, and get them to rebound. I think rebounding, and Pat Summitt used to say it, I think rebounding is the most important part of the game, especially if you want to be a consistent winner, because I'm talking about your team, not in, not out win, because you're going to have nights you don't shoot the ball well. But if I can limit that other team to one shot of possession, and if we can get second and third looks, even on a bad night, we got a chance to win. So I think rebounding is where it starts. Defending obviously takes a lot of pressure off your offense if you can stop people. And, we do what we call Pac Defense, where we're just trying to contain, keep you in front of us, and then allow the other team to miss. I think the last 2 years we've been second in the country behind UConn in fewest fouls. So we really try to concentrate on defending and then making people hit jump shots. And so I think that's it. And then offensively, like I said, recruit shooters, and they can make you look good even when the play is horrible. They can pull one out. So that helps.
And definitely.
Janet, let me tell a story on West real fast. We were playing, and I used this with our staff the other day. We were in a huddle, and we were fortunate enough to be up big on a team, and we hadn't worked on much zone. And Wes said, "Y'all get out there to 2-3 zone and put your hands up like you're getting held up at a 7-Eleven." And we were all out there, doing this number. So, Wes is definitely an offensive mind. And, when you talk about why he's been so successful, if you watch his offense and what they do and what he can pick apart offensively, that's definitely his strength. So I can vouch for that firsthand in our 7-Eleven hands up deep.
7, I'm gonna remember that. David Jandry tells me we got a couple questions for Wes and for Shaka. So David, why don't you ask a few questions from the folks that are joining us?
Coach Moore and Coach Smart, we've had a couple folks ask, how has the NCAA's granting of waivers and also COVID affected the way you're trying to put rosters together, not only for this year, but in the future?
Go ahead, Coach.
Well, it's certainly a unique adjustment, and you combine that with the fact that I think in January, the Division I Council is going to be voting on transfer legislation. So it's possible, very possible, that as of January, kids will be able to transfer with a one-time exception to not have to sit out, which obviously impacts programs at different levels in different ways. For us, it's a little bit unique just in that guys at this level, and Mike will tell you this, they don't really anticipate being in college 4 years. And the ideal season for them is one in which at the end of the season, they leave college and go to the NBA. So if you ask the majority of our guys whether they have more eligibility or not, they want to go off to play professional basketball after this season. Now, that doesn't always happen. I think it's a good move by the NCAA just from the standpoint of giving teams and coaches the most flexibility possible in a very, very challenging year from the standpoint of, all the COVID disruptions and potential, quarantines. And so that way, like we had a guy that was going to redshirt this year, he'll be available to play. And it kind of puts us in a weird spot because, do we try to get him into the rotation some, or because obviously him playing doesn't hurt his redshirt year. Everybody gets one. The thing that I need to do a better job with, and Mike will tell you, is I've always tried to I'm a pretty empathetic person, unlike, maybe some coaches. So I've always tried to keep a variety of guys happy with, some playing time and giving them an opportunity and, rewarding their work and practice. But at the end of the day, if that goes against winning the game, then that's not the right thing to do. So, we're just going to do the best we can to put the right guys on the floor, knowing that at the end of the season, every player will have a decision to make if they want to take advantage of that extra year of eligibility.
Yeah.
As far as us, we had 2 seniors this year and only 1 next year. So it doesn't make it as tough on us. But I know what Coach Smart's saying. You're worried about roles and, all those things and how people are going to all mesh together and try to keep people happy, but you got to win ball games. It really turned out good for us. We did have a grad transfer come in from Cal Fullerton, a point guard that's really good. We thought we were only going to have her 1 year as a grad transfer. And I was actually, because I was worried about what are we going to do at point guard a year from now, because we didn't really have a really good backup plan. In fact, I was going to call Honey and see if we maybe had missed a year of eligibility and see if she'd ready to make a comeback. But fortunately, because of the grad transfer and the adding a additional year, she'll be able to play 2 years for us. So, and from that standpoint, we benefit from it. But you're right. It's going to be hard for some coaches to have those conversations with seniors, for instance, that maybe they feel like we're better off if you go ahead, you've got your degree, and go ahead and transition out into the real world. And maybe they're saying, hey, I don't want to go to the real world. Let me stay here, coach. That's a tough call because you can't keep everybody happy, especially if your roster keeps ballooning up.
Yeah. So Mike and Honey Brown, y'all answer that question too. How do you think about our future? Hey, remember, I'm your boss, so you better have the right answer. How do you think about managing our rosters going forward?
I don't think anybody truly knows, and I think, the transfer rule that is coming about in January that's going to go through, as we all know, at our level, that on top of the extra year of eligibility, I think it's going to be the craziest 6 to 8 months college basketball on both sides has ever seen. You mix in, it would be crazy without COVID. Now you mix that in and, you've got kids who can move one time. So I'm not sure that anybody truly knows what their roster looks like. And then you take the varying levels of what the NCAA is going to do in terms of like, well, hey, if you've got 2 seniors, then you can sign 2 more. But as we know, not every school in the country is going to do that. Not every school in the country is going to fund 15, 16 scholarships for a year. So I think it's going to be a real chess match. I think it's going to really affect how some people recruit. I tell you, it's really going to affect high school seniors right now.
Honey, what do you think about it? Because, how many you have on the roster right now? We're not at the 15, so this could be a good.
Yeah. We're not at 15, and I totally agree with Mike. It's going to be crazy, and especially I think for, of course, Power Fives, but players at our level, because if they've had a really good season, they might think, oh, I'm going to go try my, go somewhere else or try to get looked at by a Power Five, and might have that ability to have more of that ability to look into that than they did before, because they may not have to sit. But, we've all talked about, wanting to have good people. I think that's the other piece, is we'll have to do a lot of homework, even more homework as coaches, to make sure they're not just good players, but good people if you're willing to bring someone to your program. I think you've really got to, of course, I think all this group here, we do a good job of trying to continue to recruit our own kids. I say that to our staff of we've got to take care of our own here and make sure that they're the right fit and that they enjoy things here for the right reasons. And then if it doesn't work out, then they'll have opportunities to move on. But, I'm not similar to what Brenda thought before, 15 scholarships, that's still, a lot of bodies to manage to keep happy when you can put 5 out there. So you've got to have the right 15 if you're going to carry 15. And if not, you might be better off carrying 13 or 14 in case you do have an opportunity to take a transfer. So I think that's, my approach right now is just, like Mike said, just waiting to see what happens in some respects, but keeping our eyes on things for sure.
Yeah. David Jandrew, we got time for another question or two, and you said they're coming in, so ask another one.
This one's come up a couple of times. So Coach Moore and Coach Smart, we need your most embarrassing Honey Brown and Mike Morrell stories.
Go ahead, Coach.
Oh, man, that doesn't give me any time to think. No, I don't know if I have anything real embarrassing. Of course, we did used to play poker in the back of the bus back in the day, and I'd take their meal money from them. So that was always fun. But I know we go to a tournament every Thanksgiving in the DC area, and we were going to do a tour of the White House, and the lady was checking everybody when we checked in, and Honey stepped up and said, "Yeah, Honey Brown." And the lady goes, "Oh, real cute. Now, what's your real name?" So no, I don't know. I don't have anything too much. That's been a while. I probably couldn't remember it if I did, but it was a great experience. Like I said, it was so much fun getting players like Honey and seeing that program grow. So owe her a lot. I probably wouldn't be here if Honey hadn't hit all those threes.
Oh, wow. Shaka, what's your story on Mike Morrell?
You know what? I got a couple, Janet, you'll have to call me offline. I got a couple that are not PG that I can't share on this Zoom, but I don't think these are really embarrassing, but I'll tell you a couple things real quick that shed light on who Mike is. You guys have heard of coaches that when they get upset, they kick balls like up in the stands. And Mike is the only guy I've ever seen who kicks balls when something good happens. And so it's a really endearing thing because he's demonstrating his excitement. We also have this thing we started at VCU that we do some here when we're doing a shooting drill where, let's say, 3 guys are shooting the ball one after the other. And if all 3 guys make the shot, then it's kind of expected that everybody in the drill stops and celebrates for a second or two. And one of the ways, as you guys know, that these young guys celebrate is they do like chest bumps in the air, like a jumping chest bump. And so Mike would get involved in these chest bumps with these guys, but he's not as tall or athletic as they are. So he would end up on the ground quite often after kind of running into one of these guys in the air on a chest bump. And then the last thing would be, as you guys have probably seen, Mike is very, very passionate, and he does not like giving up easy baskets. And so there was once a time where we were watching film and we had given up an easy basket, and, you know, I'm talking on the film, and Mike went up, and it was a flat screen TV, and he hit the TV with his hand here so hard that it just the colors on the TV were all jacked up and messed up, and his face went like blood red, like he was embarrassed because obviously that was the end of our film session, so the guys were happy. But I just think Mike's passion, whether it comes out in a way of smashing the TV or kicking the ball or the chest bumps, it's a pretty authentic, real thing, and I certainly miss being around him.
Well, we want to we're going to wind down here. David Jandrew is going to make sure to remind everybody, and I will too, no spectators here for a while. So you got to make sure you're logging on the ESPN Plus or watching on our local TV. We've got several games. Obviously, we're going to be able to watch the Maui Invitational, and I always tune in the ACC network, so we'll be able to watch all these coaches and their players play. Also, we want to remind our fans, you have the opportunity, if you like, something I think went out yesterday, if you want to buy, and I'm going to get one, I'm going to download a picture, but I'm going to use my dog instead of my picture because they get tired of seeing my face. A life-size cutout of yourself that can support the team while we don't have fans. David will get that information out to you too. I want to thank, I really believe, as I'm sitting here looking at Mike and Honey and Shaka and Wes, these are Hall of Fame coaches here, folks, and we're so thrilled that all of them are willing to not only help each other, but also give back to the community, give back to student athletes, and spend some time with us, because we love basketball in Asheville. I will tell you that. We just love basketball here. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and Donna setting this up. And one more thank you to Mako Medical for sponsoring this basketball kickoff for the Bulldogs. And we wish you a lot of luck, Shaka, and Wes too. We'll be following you. Mike and Honey, you have no option but to be successful, because you know I'm going to be right there after you. So we're going to go get them. Go Bulldogs, and thank you so much, everybody. Thanks.
Thanks.